Hello, welcome to another episode of Back to the City. Today I'm joined by the full band, The Lovely Duck, and in the duplex I have both Sonia and Travis with me. I'm excited that you're going to play a song from each of the two most recent releases and a brand new song, which has fast become my favourite The Lovely Duck song.
Good. Nice.
It's a good song.
Yeah, and actually I've had a listen to a little bit of the other material from the forthcoming record in demo form, and that's extremely promising too. So I'll be quizzing you a lot about the new direction soon.
All right.
We'll see what they have to say. But in the meantime, let's begin with my favourite new The Lovely Dark song. This is Blackwell, newly christened, newly written, Blackwell, at the Minnehaha Recording Company by The Lovely Duck.
Teach you to see like a raven. When the bell bends, you'll know how much power you gave him. Tell me, what am I to learn? By the path that you leave, you will always return. Leave me behind, have your adventure. Open your eyes, let us be joined back together. Here's where you begin, right where your body collapses. She beckons you in, the universe turns on its axis with only a song given to you for protection. Tell me, what am I to learn? By the path that you leave, you will always return. Leave behind, have your adventure. Reopen your eyes, let us be joined back together.
That was Blackwell, which is named after John Blackwell, who is a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Speaking of drummers, you have two extremely good math rock background drummers in your band.
We do.
And Benjamin is the one who of course plays in Self-Evident. He'll be on Back to the City again soon.
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin is responsible for the John Blackwell inspired rhythm that spawned this song. In the session, Benjamin was explaining to me that it comes from the U tribe, this rhythm. Gahu is the name of the style, which one can read about if one wants to, in the West African Rhythms for the Drum Set, which is a highly recommended book. Do you guys know very much about that rhythm?
Not about that rhythm. We try to be well versed in world music, but Ben actually went, part of his minor, I believe, was actually taking classes in world percussion.
Mm-hmm.
And we're lucky enough to play with two good drummers, and one of them, actually Ben, has written numerous books on how to play drums.
He has, yeah.
So it's something that where he is very much always delving into to figure out a way how to incorporate different percussion, different types of beats into it, and paying respect and paying influence to all the different, basically ways to incorporate that into what we're doing and as a way to help teach the students as well.
Yeah. When I was doing considerably less detailed research on this than Benjamin has done,
Sure.
I discovered that cross rhythms and polyrhythms were a very important part of the Gahu style. What I was reading was highlighting that the simultaneity of the contrasting rhythm patterns to some extent kind of emulating the complexity of life, and so the rhythm is related to being resolute and kind of dealing with the challenges of life. I wondered is there anything about the way in which the rhythm, these cross rhythms are, that inspired the lyrical content or anything else about the song?
Well, this was kind of an unusual song because it started with a rhythm that Ben had conceived, and I think it was you and Ben just jamming in the studio, and you came back to me with like a little sampling. I don't know if it was a full song yet, but I sat down with it and I didn't really know all the background that you just gave me. So I ran with it and I came up with something completely different.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about like the way that influences your mind. And what I came up with was I was reading Carlos Castaneda at the time, The Teachings of Don Juan.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I don't know, it probably doesn't relate in any actual linear way, but maybe it was somewhat influenced by, what did you say, the complexity of life?
Yeah, well, meeting the challenges of life.
Yeah.
So it's an expression of the inherent potential of human thought to meet the challenges of life.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was somehow just like transmuted to me spiritually, but like that book is all about exactly that sort of content.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, it's about a man who goes to the desert, and he's a botanist, and he's in search of, he wants to like learn all about peyote and about like medicine men and the tradition of all the different plants of the desert. And so he, in his pursuit of knowledge, becomes connected with this medicine man, and he's a Yaqui Indian in northern Mexico.
Okay.
And so he starts doing the path to become a medicine man himself. And people had recommended this book to me, and I kept getting it as a gift over and over again. I was like, how does this relate to my life? I don't know, but I finally felt like I had to read it.
You received it as a gift multiple
times?
times?
It was given to me.
Okay, one time it was given to you. But yeah, like people just kept giving me this book, and so I read it over a holiday, and it did, it's very impactful, and there's a lot of very strong metaphors and images, and and primarily the song is about the idea of sort of the penultimate moment of this training is to become a skinwalker, or somebody that enters the body, like they can transfigure themselves into an animal.
Which is why the opening lyric is slide into the skin.
Yes.
And a recurring, in the chorus, I think it's the chorus, here's where you begin right when your body collapses. Is that in the chorus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's challenged to basically become friends with these 3 different plants that induce a hallucinogenic experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a pleasant experience. It's not, something that you'd want to do recreationally. But
this is a challenge that he has for some
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he goes through all these different processes, and a lot of the times he's just like he's collapsed on the ground. And it's kind of a metaphor, I guess, for just like you have to kind of shed your skin and you have to start over, and like where you begin is truly where you collapse. And you have to like reinvent yourself.
I've noticed that reinvention is a recurring theme.
Interesting.
In Lovely Dark.
Yeah.
And we seem to have a shared obsession with the Phoenix.
Yeah. Oh, that's him.
Yeah. Okay. The Phoenix. I have a song about the Phoenix, and there is a song called Phoenix on Territories on the first Lovely Dark record. I could go for a rebirth. Is that that's the
that was back when I used to sing a little bit.
Yeah.
I
like your singing voice.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
It's
Lots of specifics about the Phoenix legend in there, such as the nest of frankincense and so on. But I feel like that kind of sets something in motion that shows up in all of the records in different ways.
It's so interesting that you make that connection.
A lot of it's also a mixture of mythology and history.
Yeah.
Because we try delving into what's real, what's not, and I think that's a common
Yeah.
So like the element of the phoenix, they actually trace back a bird that has migrational patterns every 200 years.
Okay.
So it would actually go into a nest, and it would grab the areas, and how birds in America often do like a dust bath in order to get cleaned.
Yep.
They would actually do flame baths.
Oh, okay.
So they have proof of this, like in the 30s and 40s videos and everything else, of like the bird that they think was the mystical phoenix bird would actually be a bird that would gather this other nest, would grab a flame from somewhere else, light their own nest on fire, and roll around on it and fly away. And then 200 years later, the bird would come back, so it's enough time for that bird to become a mythical creature. And that's what kind of cemented that.
That's where the legend of the phoenix potentially comes from.
That's possibly, yeah. So like the history between like the actual events and myth, whatever else, like that meeting point is part of that.
Myth is another recurring theme in Lovely Dark, and there's an interesting attitude towards myths in the song North Star. I don't care what the experts claim about, for example, the origins of the phoenix myth.
That might be me answering you.
I'm in no mood for practicality when all the myths remain.
Yeah.
That was me.
That was you. We were just talking about how Territories was mostly Travis, and he was the primary songwriter. Period.
Yeah. So you were in
and I was
the band
singer, mostly.
Were you a backing vocalist initially?
I don't know. My role at that point was I was trying to play piano not well, and I was I did a lot of like coming up with melodies, and we kind of co-wrote some songs. Like I was more like his editor.
Yeah.
I would say at that point than like the primary songwriter, but there were a few songs that I wrote. That
basically,
sort of with
like
me.
How the band started was I played in different bands, and Sonia was always the person there, kind of watching and helping from the side. And since the moment we first started getting together, we were going out for 10 years before Territories came out and we got married. And it was like 2 years into it, I think. I tried making Sonia write one of the first songs that she ever wrote. And it turned into one of the songs in Territories. But she was so embarrassed to sing that I had to leave the apartment to come back into it.
Which song?
Brother's Keeper.
Brother's Keeper, yep. That was probably the first song that I ever wrote in a complete form.
You wrote it on piano?
He wrote a guitar part, and then we kind of pieced it together. And I think the percussion was you banging on a suitcase.
And the empty water jug.
Yeah.
And an empty water jug.
Yeah,
So,
which was called the Phoenix, the apartment that you lived in at the time.
A good half of the first album, Territories, was written in like 8 years beforehand of the band.
Yeah.
And then like
I was kind of like the collection of the best
somewhere
songs.
called the
and
Phoenix.
other spots. Like I've written probably like 50, 60 songs that went to that, and it was just like after playing in bands, I was like, I want to try doing something where it would actually be these songs.
Sure.
And so Sonia's a much better singer than me.
Thanks.
And and some other friends I had playing bands, like Max. I used to play in a band with him called Young Brides, and he's an amazing drummer. And so I was like, hey Max, we're gonna try doing some of the stuff that I had in my bathroom bedroom demos, and actually try making an album.
We did record some of it in the bathroom, so.
And Max was like, why just make demos? Why not just form a band? So like, all right. So
Thank you for that idea, Max. I'm glad Max suggested that.
So like midway through that is where it changed and became real. So like Territories was the album that was a preconceived notion that started before the band actually was together.
You begin to create the record before you realize that you're creating a record and that you are a band.
And after that it switches, and as more and more time progresses, it encapsulates every different person who's in the band and all the different energy and emotion.
Like bringing it back around to Blackwell, that's the first song. I mean, there were some songs in the beginning where Ben came forward with drum beats, but they never really materialized into anything. Yeah. And this time I feel like we were really ready as a band to be like, okay, you first. And now we are comfortable enough with our songwriting abilities to, start with a rhythm and then work backwards.
Is that happening? So you have about 6 or 7 fully formed new songs, is that right?
Yeah.
And then a bunch of other songs that are on their way to completion.
Yeah, I mean, there's always kind of room for, something might end up on the cutting room floor. Yeah. Still, but we're working pretty hard on about 6 or 7 songs.
I really enjoyed The Light and The Wires too, which I've heard in demo.
Yeah.
And I find it particularly interesting, given both some recurring themes from before and the band name, that the lyrics in the chorus to that are, "No darkness can hide us, bring the lights and the wires, follow me." What is the significance of this shift from dark, from like lovely dark, to lights and wires in that song?
That's just, it's a very unusual chorus too, because Travis wrote that song almost in its entirety, right? And then I went back with kind of, usually he writes a song, it's more like a poem. And then I go back and I'm like, I can't sing that. You know, there's too many S's in a row.
Too much sibilance.
Yeah, like so I go back and then I kind of pick and choose and match the lyrics to the words and sort of move things around. So I rewrote the chorus, but the one thing that I did keep was bring the lights and the wires. And this is probably our most political song. It was sort of conceived like right around the inauguration. And our themes, I feel like, are definitely more like mythology and literature and science and, you know, kind of transcending the world of the real. But this was like, you know, it really penetrated deep to our core. We need to write some.
We did about
something.
700. This was shortly after the birth of our daughter, and I was downstairs in the basement. It was during this time, so I ended up writing 7 to 8 political songs.
Just in the darkness on your computer.
Just typing. which equates, like, you know, that's, I always make fun of, like, myself. I grew up in South Dakota. I had a Mohawk. I wrote songs about, like, the political war in Rwanda when I was like 17. So, like, there's a lot of that, like, political nature that I like to get into, but there's some things that's just, like, you can win over more people and try to get more people into a vibe, I feel, not beating it over the head, and finding some other way of, like, finding a common ground of mutual things. And for us, I think a lot of things is that we struggle on is myth and religion, because that's a universal to some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that is still a lens through which the political is being approached in the new material.
It's kind of the way we do things actually overall. It's like through the lens of mythology and through these sort of like universal archetypal themes, we approach things that are more controversial or like more, what's the word I'm looking for, visceral, I guess.
So especially, and that comes through in the terminology of marking false kings and queens.
Yeah, that was all Travis, and I love singing that line. It's like I get super worked up whenever I.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just, I mean, I think it's pretty clear where our like political alliances lie.
Yes.
So to be able to sing that line, that's just like my moment of like, you know, F you.
Yeah, and it's still lovely dark, and it's still kind of suffused in some of the diction.
Yeah, talking about kings and queens, we're not
false kings and queens are not unique to our time now.
Of course,
like it's always been inherent nature.
I call to the wild-eyed children. So there is this. You were talking about the context of having a newborn child. There were 6 newborn children during the course of writing.
There were 5.
5.
But
okay.
You just round up. There may have been a 6th one since we.
Okay, so during the course of writing the most recent record, Newborn, there were 5 newborns within the band. Was the record going to be called Newborn prior to that?
I don't think so. It was just like, it became clear to us, I think, that it kind of had to be at that point.
We had a few different ones that we were trying to figure out, because Newborn also is with that, and then with also some of the themes being newborn is kind of like born again. So it's like that nature between the two of the things being fresh to the world.
Yeah, and as being a parent, you as a human being are born again.
Yeah.
You know, you have to re-collaborate everything. Like reinvent yourself as a person, so we all felt very much like newborns after our children were born.
Absolutely, yeah. The child is the father or mother of the
big time
of the parent.
Lots of fathers and mothers on this.
Definitely.
So it wasn't going to be called Newborn prior to that, but there has always been this focus on rebirth and birth in the band. Did that come through more because of the biographical? But, you know, with the two of you being 2 of the new parents.
I think it's partly due to the change in the seasons. Like in the Midwest, we're always forced to rebirth per year. And then it's also, you know, we're not 22-year-old playing music. Like we've been doing this for a long time. During the course of the band's life, we've gotten married, we've gotten divorced, we've had kids. There's been changes, there's been cycles, everything else, and having to reinvent yourself. Whereas I feel like, you know, from 21 to 27, I might be talking out of turn, but I feel like I changed becoming the same person over and over again. Whereas like with the course of the span, it's always been something adapting, changing to the outside stimuli, adapting to the environment, basically.
So for you in earlier life, the changes were less fundamental.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, there's always going to be fundamental things that happen to you, but there's something that, I don't know if it's because I'm in the world I'm in right now, but like, you know, marriage is a huge thing. When you have a kid, that's a huge thing that changes your entire world and everything else. The fact that we have so many talented people and friends that do this with us and everything else, like it means a whole lot that they're taking time away from their family and everything else to jump in and like do this type of work. Like it's amazing to have this group of camaraderie that we have, and then the fact that it's been around for 7 years now, that says a whole lot, you know. So it changes things morph. We're not the same people that we were 7 years ago. We've changed numerous times over the course. You know, we're adapting and everything else, but the band's still surviving. Has
that become increasingly like a focus of the music then, like a lyrical focus?
Probably on some deep level,
yeah.
I would say yes. I mean, when you were pointing out the different themes of rebirth and death, it brought it back to my attention, I guess. You know, it's sort of just subconscious. You know, you write about things that you're feeling, and sometimes you don't even realize that there's a theme tying it all together.
I mean, King of Swords, for example, has the lyrics remaking, redestroying.
Yeah.
On and on it goes.
That is funny. Kind of like one-trick ponies over here.
No, not at all. And also, if one is going to have one trick, then I think, you know,
remaking and redestroying.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good trick.
Yeah, through the lens of I think it kind of relates so much to the human condition. Again, also that the when we were talking about the rhythm before and the complexity of the rhythm, one could think about dealing with the complexity of life in a resilient way.
Yeah.
That kind of relates to this too, I think.
Yeah, because in order to be resilient in life, you do have to be able to reinvent yourself, and I personally believe like you can't be too rigid in who you are.
Sure.
Otherwise, life is just gonna knock you over.
They always say every 7 years, right?
That your body regenerates all its cells.
Well, cells do different, but yeah.
So there's this regenerative cycle. Within the Legend of the Phoenix, there's the cycle of death and rebirth. This cyclical image seems really crucial, again, actually throughout Lovely Dark, but particularly in Newborn, which opens with the next song that you'll perform, The Wheel. And there's references to circles throughout. In Cradled in Bone, there are radiant circles, for example. There it seems like that's a good kind of circle. A radiant circle is a good kind of circle. But in The Wheel, the circling, you're spinning the wheel again right after a promise is broken. So could we reflect a little bit on the cyclical, the importance of the cyclical, and are there good and bad cycles?
I'll let Sonia go into The Wheel, but before we go into that, Cradled in Bone, pregnancy.
Oh,
a newborn is literally cradled in bone.
There we go. Yeah.
So that's what that whole song is about. It's a song about pregnancy and having a child.
Yeah, which at the time I kind of wanted to have a baby, but I wasn't pregnant yet. But it was sort of on the horizon.
Unlike when we recorded, she was
I was 37 weeks pregnant.
Oh wow! When you were doing the vocals.
When I recorded The Wheel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very pregnant.
It was a very uncomfortable time.
It was very. I wouldn't want to do that again.
But The Wheel. So.
So, you asked me about negative cycles versus positive cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, The Wheel is primarily about the wheel of samsara, or like the idea of like death and rebirth again. And I guess the wheel that I'm writing about there is more the idea that death is just a part of life. I guess so. It's not really a negative thing. Like the promise is broken, I guess, is more about the idea of just like life is over, if that makes sense. Like there's like a promise that exists within each person that ends when you die. If that makes sense. Like a life cut short early. That's what this song is about. I was really into this book. Evan Harris Walker is the author. It's called The Physics of Consciousness.
I was determined to ask you. I'm glad you bring it up.
Yeah, and it was just like, it blew my mind apart. I found it in my dad's stash of books, and he's just like, okay, take it. I never made it through.
That's an intriguing phrase, the physics of consciousness.
Yeah.
So why is it called the physics of consciousness?
It's about a man who was a theoretical physicist, and his girlfriend, or like his love interest, died when she was very young.
Okay.
And so he was driven to explore science kind of as a way of explaining, like, why do we die? You know, what happens when we die? And can we still contact people after they die? Are they still like part of our lives? And in his studies, and like this is all, it's kind of like physics for lay people, so you can read through. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, physics.
I'm a lay person, but I still was just like, oh my god, this is exhausting. So it took me like
progressively.
Yeah, it took me like years to get through it, you know.
Okay.
And it was just such a part of my life for a long time. So, so he was motivated to become a theoretical physicist because he had this loss, and this woman died when he was so young. Yeah. And so that's kind of what this song is about, like losing somebody young, and like why not become a priest? You know, like why become a physicist instead of like somebody more focused on religion or like the spiritual aspects of life. And that just fascinated me. And so there's just a lot of, Travis was just quizzing me about this today. But yeah, a lot of the metaphors are just about the movement of time and like the appearance of things passing away and dying.
In the wheel in particular?
Yeah. When in fact, you know, death is an illusion. And it's all just about like the transmutation of matter into another thing. Like energy can't be created or destroyed. So it's all just a cyclical wheel.
So, which is why it begins, would you believe she's gone from the world? That's the opening line of the album and the song.
Yeah, and that's in reference to his girlfriend who passed away when she was young. So she's the innocent little bird.
Yeah, the innocent little bird. And then right after that lyric, the guitar riff comes in. That cruel pretender fooled you again, dear. Who's the cruel pretender? Death, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So like the kind of the joke of death. It's like the idea. I read a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh too. That's a big influence in my life, and he wrote about the idea of you see an autumn leaf on the ground, and he would always say like you're only pretending, because as the leaf is lying decaying on the ground, another leaf is forming on the tree. So it's the idea that death is an illusion. You know, death is the pretender.
What would you say are some kind of defining features of the band and of that intro?
I think percussion is like, it's always been the key for us. You know, we wanted to have two drummers from the beginning, and we wanted to have kind of a tribal sort of wild feel.
And I was joking with Sonia before we came over that when we started, right at the same time, right before we had our first show, was when Palika had the first show.
Oh.
Which was with the two drummers.
Yes.
But they're still a little bit behind us in regards to
and there's, are you familiar with Murph?
Yep.
Yeah, they have two drummers.
And Maith as well used to have two drummers.
Wow, yeah.
Yep. So.
Is there much unison with the two drums or not?
Not generally.
Yeah.
They pride themselves on being on having their own unique style. And how we like to, at least how I like to refer to them, is that Ben's the head and Max is the heart.
I don't know if they know that we refer to them as that.
They will do soon.
So Ben is very much a talented drummer who circles around a part like a vulture and locks into it and never falls apart. Like it's
or
just,
a raven.
Yeah,
like
you can do a raven. That's more flattering bird than
whereas
and
Max,
it gets a shout out in Blackwell.
Max plays from heart often, so like his other band technician, it's all like, you know, just like emotion. We like to force Sonia to be right between the two drums.
It's true. So I get to absorb it a lot.
Yeah. Well, we managed that in the studio.
I was right where I usually am.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, shall we return to the studio for the performance of The Wheel?
Sure.
And then treat that as the introduction to talking more about the record, Newborn, that it's from. So this is The Wheel, performed by Lovely Dark at the Minnehaha Recording Company. That was The Wheel by Lovely Duck. This is the front cover of the record Newborn, and it strikes me as interesting that it has it's basically a Vitruvian woman.
We stumbled into an amazing illustrator from England. His name is Kieran Wakeman.
Okay.
And he offered to help us out with some of the artwork.
Okay.
So the woman who's on the cover was paying homage to Joan of Arc, because the whole thing is often about science myth and like the struggling about how often you're ahead of the curve and possibly punished from it. And then there's also a whole bunch of sacred geometry as well, which is, if you look at sacred geometry, there's a whole notion of the mixture between science, mathematics, religion, mythology.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the common element between a lot of that.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the Vitruvian woman, like that's kind of the same layout, the idea of showing the proportions.
Yeah, led by the idea of the human figure as the principal source of proportion, that kind of shed new light on what was happening in some of the songs. So, like at the center of the record, both Torchbearer and I Am the Altar. It's interesting the way in which the human figure is kind of characterized in those two songs. The source was within you in particular in Torchbearer.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? So the source was within you, cut yourself open and show me. What's being said about what's inside a person?
I'm trying to think back.
Well, originally that song was about Giordano Bruno.
Yeah,
okay.
It was. And we've been watching the Neil deGrasse Tyson, The Cosmos. And there's this great animation of Giordano Bruno where he's kind of considered like the patron saint of scientists. Because he was burned at the stake for believing in heretical ideas that there were other universes, that Earth was not the center of everything. And I mean, like that was kind of a prevailing idea that was taking off among the intellectuals and scientists of the time, but he was actually burned at the stake for it. And so that's kind of what that song is about. The idea. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's the standing before the crowd with your accusers gathered round.
Yep.
The idea of being burned at the stake for believing in something that's ahead of its time, and the idea that the source is within you, that God is within you, God is within all of us.
Of the person who will reveal the truth and do away with illusion. It's interesting. There's an interesting relationship between that then and the new song, "The Light and the Wires," with light imagery again, illuminating. Because it ends when the torchbearer lifts the flames. Lantern high, is that right? No disguise will survive in the light.
Yeah, when he lifts the lantern high. Yeah.
The lantern high, yeah.
So yeah, it's the idea of just like you can't fight progress. You can't fight science. This idea that he was putting forward about like changing the universe and changing the idea of what was at the center of the universe. Like you can't fight against that. Like you can keep burning people at the stake, but eventually the
enlightenment will happen.
Yeah, enlightenment's going to happen. And so that's kind of the theme of that song.
There's a more kind of orchestral sound to this record than in Into the Royal.
Yeah.
And these some of the way in which myth is being treated, although there was the Phoenix and Lazarus was the opening track to Territories. There's always been this religious imagery and that kind of diction, but I feel like it's more, the way in which it's present is different in Newborn. Is there a relationship between the sonic shift and the particular manner in which this religious imagery and myth is incorporated?
I'd say so. I think a good portion of it, the first album was had certain tendencies we were preventing to come out, and we were trying to convince ourselves we were only a folk band.
Right, but we were a folk duo to begin with.
Yeah, so there was always this fear of playing distortion. I think there was like a tiny bit of distortion that made it into like one chorus on Territory.
Well, that's changed.
Yeah, and so I don't know, we just finally got into it and we really dug in and like looked at our influences and
got more comfortable in our own skin and taking influence from everyone rather than just a way that we thought we should be, basically.
Influence from everyone, but mostly Brits.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who are some of the obscure British influences? I wonder whether I know any of them.
Well, Fairport Convention.
Yeah.
I actually didn't even really listen to Fairport Convention until we had John, our guitarist on Newborn.
John Hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the one who Travis has like an encyclopedic mind, so he knew all about Fairport Convention and everything beforehand. But John was the one that really got me into Brit folk, and I think it was through comparisons that he made when he was reviewing our record. I was like,
really?
I need to check this
So
stuff
he
out.
reviewed one record, and then by the time the next record came about,
and then at one point we were just like, we need a new guitarist. He obviously likes the band. He can play guitar. Like, let's get him involved. But it was when he said that we sounded like these British folk bands. That's when I was like, I need to bone up on this.
Well, I think like Sonia in high school is in madrigal choirs.
Yeah. So I've always been very influenced by.
It's not like how
medieval
folk music turns into punk. British folk, I think, turns into weird indie rock and metal.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of like that mixture of all that kind of trying to feed into the same fulcrum, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just have always really loved, I don't know, just the aesthetic of British music or British folk music in general. Like,
well, Lorena McKenna and Peter Gabriel were like your
those were my
junior
two
high
big influences pre teen years. You know, like that's what I grew up with. So I always really liked more of a minor key and like a lot of rich harmonies, and that's kind of where I come from musically.
You have Jordan Myers, or now Jor.
Yeah.
On a few songs, is that right? On
Newborn?
Yeah.
Including I Am the Altar.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that there's a reference to the cup of bones. So we have the cradle of bones at one moment. And what's the significance of the cup of bones? And then colon in the lyrics, revelations.
That was actually, you wrote that song.
Yeah, it's we've written a few songs either about our honeymoon or just venturing overseas. And that was a time when we were staying in a weird Airbnb when we were in Edinburgh. And we ended up staying at this weird artist, basically a loft close to the area where they converted the history of that area with Norloch, this lake that was basically they drowned 1,000, 2,000 witches over the course of this long period.
And they made it into this beautiful like central park of Edinburgh.
Oh,
so we're like walking past this park, and we walk up the stairs and we're like talking to our Airbnb hostess. Like, oh, isn't that park so beautiful? We really enjoyed our walk. She's like, they drowned 2,000 witches, and then they drained it and turned it into this park.
And looking at that,
I have been there without realizing.
Yeah, I think most people have.
It's crazy, and it lasts like 500 years of drowning people there, basically.
Wow.
What it was used for.
Yeah.
So that's referenced in the song, or that location inspires the song?
It did. There was one song that never made it onto the album called Norloch, which is even more more literal with it, but Altar, I think, was trying to find a way to tie into some of that elements as well.
And with the witches, the idea of casting the bones. You know, like you have your cup of bones.
Oh, that's the bones.
That's where the revelations come from.
Yeah. So, because those are the nameless ones, secrets.
Yeah, I guess that I had some influence in this song, because like in tarot, death is called the nameless one.
Oh, I see.
More traditionally, like if you go really back far in tarot history, death is not called death; it's just called the nameless one. It's the idea of like death is the transmogrifier, like the changing element. Yeah. Not the idea that death is like
which fits
specter of death.
Yeah, which fits with the opening lyric.
Tying into things, so like the tarot actually predates a lot of stuff, and like it's an interesting common ground. Yeah,
I'm really into Hermeticism, and I'm dabbling in the ideas of Hermeticism at the time that I am, but so there's some theories behind where tarot came from, and that it was the kind of the melding of mythologies in a time period. I'm not going to do this justice, but pre-Christian, pre-Islam, and like around the time of like the Kabbalah and Judaism. The Middle East was kind of this melting pot of religious ideas, and there was a lot of flexibility at that time period where people were sharing mythologies back and forth, and the Silk Road was kind of allowing a lot of ideas to come from the East, from Buddhism too. And so there was this time where all the luminaries of that era were getting together and sharing mythology, and that's supposedly where the tarot comes from and where Hermeticism comes from. The idea that there's this secret hidden knowledge that exists throughout all religion, sort of like the seed of all of the Judeo-Christian religions is found in the teachings of this Hermes that existed at the time of the pharaohs.
That was a good explanation.
I was kind of
I thought that was good.
Yeah, so the tarot is, what I love about it, I'm always looking for common themes, or like the idea of shared knowledge. And, and it's sort of just like this free this time of freedom when there was like all the wise people were sharing their key ideas, their archetypal images. And so they boiled it down to these few symbols that basically explain like all the journeys of life.
Okay, so two questions related to that. All of the titles of songs on the record are tarot card names.
Not all.
Most.
Mostly.
Yeah. But yeah, several of them are.
Like the tower, for example,
Yeah.
and the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there a special significance to that?
I always come back to, our daughter's name is Hawthorne, and we always are kind of looking for the commonalities, like the common myths that unite different cultures. And the hawthorn tree is one of those things that appears cross-culturally. Like in Christian mythology, it supposedly was the crown of thorns that Christ wore on his head. And then Joseph of Arimathea, who's sort of like a biblical magician, he planted his staff in the ground and a hawthorn tree grew. And so I guess like...
It's the fairy tree. When knights were jousting, they used to hang a wreath of hawthorn against their joust sticks. So it was...
the technical term, joust
sticks.
sticks.
which turned into joysticks.
But yeah, I guess the point is like we just keep looking for these universal themes.
Yes.
And that's like, the tarot is sort of like an encyclopedia of those themes. Hodorowski said like the tarot is, the deck is God. And every time you shuffle them and lay out the cards, you take God apart. And then when you do a reading, you put God back together. And that's just because like all of these elements are so universal.
So speaking of universality, Earbuddy has said of the record that there kind of intentionally isn't like one frame of reference, allowing there, according to the Earbuddy review, for there to be a focus on the abstract spirit. That seems to fit, I think, with what you're saying about the tarot cards.
Yeah, like these themes are as much a part of our lives now as they were 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, and is the music trying to make that more acknowledged than it would otherwise be, to kind of the combination of the sound and the imagery?
Kind of like the message of the album?
Yeah, or what you see the band is fundamentally doing on some level?
Yeah,
I'd say we pull music from all kinds of different genres.
Sure.
I think that's common threads, but also this is really heady, and we try not to be really heady. So part of the music is also just trying to find some way to distill this in a way that you can listen to it and have it be slowly seep in. So some of this stuff can kind of seep in without having to be over the top.
Sure.
Our old bass player was joking around and made a Venn diagram about stuff I wrote about. And he was like wolves, fire, everything else.
Like 90% ravens.
Whenever we should do a song, he'd be like, "It just can't be about girls, can it?"
That's funny.
So, but now we're trying to get more to that universal and make it more personal about like the universal truths and universal perils that everyone feels.
In the new material?
The new material.
Yeah, and write more about, I'd say...
direct.
Yeah, like our actual experience is a little bit more barefaced than like needing to veil everything in so much metaphor.
Right. The song that we will end today's episode with is Into the Royal, which is of course the title track of Into the Royal. And I find that imagery, in that phrase very interesting, because royal, to roil something is to make it turbid, so if the water is roiled, then it's disturbing the sediment, and so it's kind of murky.
Yeah.
Is that a meaning of the word royal that's being used here?
Yeah, like I always thought of it as, into the unknown.
Oh, sure. Into this murky, unknown.
Yeah, because we were in a phase of our
water.
lives, I feel like, where we were all kind of moving into something new. And that was, that just fit really well.
Yeah.
It's an evocative phrase.
Because that's a kind of imagery, already with that record, that's imagery which is not kind of pre-established myth, but the strangeness of the phrase into the royal, because royal
the
is
royal
like
is
a verb.
not actually, it's not actually a noun.
But yeah, and then there is like the water imagery in the chorus does kind of confirm that yes, that is what was being referred to. Thrown into the royal, I'm the wave out of control in the overflow. So that's interesting, like kind of going beyond the border, creating one's own myth.
Aside, I'm not sure if it's here or not, but the cover Into the Royal.
It is, yes, it is there.
That's actually our drummer, Ben Johnson.
As a kid, with a snake coiled around his
We
neck.
saw that picture at his wedding, and we were just like, "That is the album cover, dude. That's
What is
so cool."
So yeah, this was the question last time. Why is this the album cover?
He fell off merry-go-round, I believe. And he got the bump on the side of his head.
Okay.
And his aunt's boyfriend was like, wrapped a snake around his neck, and I was like, this will calm him down.
This will calm him down.
Yeah.
But just that look of like his face, that's
Just
really
the
reserved.
intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and it still exists in Ben today. You know?
Yeah.
It's so funny. But I think the reason it was the album cover for us was, I don't know, the Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail.
Yes.
That was something that kind of kept
like
coming around
infinity
again.
loop.
Yeah, once again, infinity and death and rebirth. And that picture just fits so well, and I felt like just the wisdom of a child, you know, like just this sort of wild-eyed wisdom of a child, and what are we born with? Like, what knowledge do we have when we come from our mother's womb?
It was way better than Max's picture.
Yeah.
Max doesn't have an analogous snake bear in the picture.
No, I don't think many of us do.
Some themes in Into the Royal, in Wax Swain. That's one where there's, a character has a theory of everything pulled along by a string around your cold little heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is...
That's a deep cut. I feel like I haven't thought about that song in a long time.
But I think there's this concern about trying to explain everything. And the critique of the person that does.
String theory is what that was.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, string theory in particular.
But
Yeah,
it's
there we
also
go.
just,
String.
I feel like in my own life, I've always been struggling to have a theory of everything.
Personally, I mean, we generally we want to explain things.
Yeah, and I think that for me in particular, like, I just really want to have my life wrapped up in a bow. Like, everything kind of feeds into each other. And, when I'm working on one thing, I'm simultaneously working on another. Or having all these kind of disparate ideas.
Yeah.
Or disparate goals. And I've just struggled with that. Because life is not that simple. It's like you really can't. As soon as you're going to have a theory of everything, it's going to fall apart.
Yeah. And so in a sense there is a critique of the desire to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And a celebration of finding oneself having been thrown into the royal. How does that come through in other songs or in other ways in the record? This celebration of the unknown and exploring the unknown.
So Into the Royal, part of that was also written about Sonia's grandparents coming over with the immigrant experience.
Oh, yeah.
So part of that was about being thrust and having to reborn and reinvent themselves, because Sonia's mom was actually brought over when she was 4, right?
No, she was 3 months old.
3 months old, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but her sisters were older.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were like 6 and 8 or something like that. So yeah, I guess just the idea of like just leaping forward.
Rebirth.
And it's not even so much like, I don't know, this is such a mundane thing, but we bought a house at that time. We were taking a lot of we bought a dog, and just like this sort of leap of like, we're not messing around anymore. Like, we're not kids, like, we're adults now.
So you have the new house.
Yeah.
All of these songs are post-Phoenix home.
Yeah.
New territory.
Yep.
And but there is a reference to a house, though. Was Bound Early Frost?
Oh yeah,
Bound,
okay, there we go. Now this is...
So what about Bound? The opening track is called Bound.
Yeah, Bound. You should talk about Bound.
Well, Bound is... So Bound tied in a little bit with... gosh, this is going to make it sound like hippies, but are you familiar with the term Wood Wide Web?
No.
So there's this whole new science thing where people are trying to disprove it and they can't disprove it. Is that the fact that if trees are experiencing turmoil, they'll send nutrients and everything down into the roots and go to different trees, basically.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
So there's a communication system in beneath the roots of the tree.
I like that.
It's like basically trees made a deal with the microbes that are working on the roots. So the microbes will get the sugar from the tree, and they'll bring the tree nutrients. So there's all this whole weird new element of herbology. What's the term?
Well, like, I guess you'd say forest husbandry. Yeah. What's the word?
So like basically, let's say for example, if there's a type of scavenging beetle that comes in, that one tree will sound the alarm and they'll send it down to the roots, and then other trees will beef up their defenses.
Wow.
Or with global warming, if there's one type of tree that isn't going to survive, they push all their nutrients down to the bottom to feed it to trees that will survive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this whole new realm of that, like plants have a certain way. So like in that song, it's a lot about once again the cycle. There's this element. Sonia is an acupuncturist and herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's it references this thing that possibly sounds like a hippie thing called the ghost pipe.
Smoking the ghost pipe, but it
the
really
ghost,
is an herb.
Yeah.
It's a very cool plant, and it has no. It doesn't photosynthesize. I don't know if it doesn't photosynthesize. It has
like
no chlorophyll. It's just like
Yeah.
if you are up in the North Woods and you see this white, like bone white plant coming up out of the ground, and it lives. I hope this is true, but I think that it lives up the mycelium, like just that web.
Okay.
So it gets all of its nutrients from the mushroom kingdom. It doesn't get any nutrients from the sun and ground.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the first thing to reappear after a forest is felled.
Okay.
So there's a reference to that in that song. But when you mentioned global warming, I think that's also a huge part of what this album is about, into the royal, into the unknown, because we don't know what our next phase is and how we're going to adapt to it. And as you were going like listing the song titles, I was like, oh yeah.
Into the royal.
Because Into the Royal itself is definitely about climate change.
It's trying to that song is secretly about a relationship that's ending and jumping in and leaving the relationship to go with someone new. So it's that jumping into the royal, the climate change, into the new
it's kind of set against a backdrop of climate change. Another perfect day, another endless drought.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just the idea of like you can wake up with your lover and it's a perfect day, but it's just like, ugh, it's another endless drought.
That's the second line, and the first line is, why do you look so surprised that our luck's run out?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting...
And it's like a double meaning, because it's not only like, why do you look so surprised that our luck has run out with how we've treated the planet?
Yes.
Which, again, sounds super hippie, but...
And
then how do you look so surprised that our luck's run out that this relationship is over?
Yeah.
So it's like a simultaneous...
And then also, it'll come for you like it comes for me.
Yep.
As a and those type of relationships are always spiraling, searching for something new. It's always going to be something, it's hard to find something that'll last, whether it's anything,
Given the context of the song, given the focus on global warming and everything, there is an optimism, I think, to this song. Seas will rise, ebb and flows, focus on the ebb and flow. I will survive. I feel like the way in which this record speaks of being thrown into the royal is generally a positive thing. Like, let's survive this.
Yeah, and when you were saying, it'll come for you like it comes for me, Travis and I really co-wrote this song. Like, usually I don't think that we sit down together and hammer out all the lyrics at the same time.
You're like the trees working together.
But yeah, this one, I think we were simultaneously writing it, and I think we both kind of had a different narrative in our mind at the same time. Because, like, what I think of when it'll come for you like it comes for me, like, it comes for the rich and the poor. Like, it makes no difference whether you have, like, a mansion on the edge of the water when it rises, or a little shanty. Yeah, whether it's your golf course or your shanty town, like, it'll come for you. And I think that's the positive thing of Into the Royal, is sort of like the Fight Club moment when all the buildings fall down. It's like the great resetting. And I don't know, that's what I was obsessed with at the time.
Yeah, sure. Which was kind of like leveling and the universality again. Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels like there's justice in that,
Absolutely. What did it mean to you?
It's about I mean, I think as long as you're paying attention, it's scary out there, and there's always like, Sonia and I look at the future and news in different ways, where I like to stare into the abyss. I like to stare into the abyss too long, and then
you were doing so this morning. You talked.
Yeah, I do. I like to figure out what's happening out there, the other intentions and everything else, and I try to absorb it and find a way to combat it in a certain way.
Yeah.
I like to see the darkness, whereas Sonia likes to see the light.
Yeah. Well, I think you like to see the darkness and then
to find a way to counteract.
To know what's
there.
Yeah.
I want to see what's in the darkness, whereas Sonia is...
And I'm always looking for like the silver lining. Yeah, definitely.
It's a good pairing.
Because then I get the news kind of filtered through him. And I'm like, okay, but tell me, let's find a silver lining here.
So as we are entering, being thrown into the royal, even more so than when the record Into the Royal was being made, You were saying that with some of the songs there is more of a political focus.
You can't escape it.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that was overt got skirted away, so we're trying to focus more on the personal rather than the political.
Yeah.
So it's we at the time of the presidential inauguration, we spent a night working on a song that's never going to see the light of day called "The Spider." And we had a few different things like that we tried going on, and now we
just needed some sort of outlet. I feel like at that point, so we just wrote some like not so great songs.
You thought that they were too direct?
I don't know. It was just, I guess, yeah. It kind of came out to just be like it didn't fit into the mythology of Lovely Dark. You know, there were some lines that just didn't feel quite us, and it was kind of clunky to sing. So we were sort of like, let's take this back to the drawing board. Like I think you mentioned that you listened to some of the new songs, like Thin Veil.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just like a straight up like Trump song.
Yeah.
And
initially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just kept saying, like, I'm singing this, the lyrics are good, but I just don't feel it, you know, like...
It was also 2 years after when I first wrote it.
Yeah, things have changed. I mean, have they? No, they're worse.
No.
But, I don't know, it didn't feel... Like, I wrote recently somewhere that Lovely Dark is like where I escape to. You know, it's sort of like my world, of my fantasy world, in a way. And so to, like, bring something so political and so current, I wanted to find a way to make something that was more enduring and like bringing it back to those archetypes again, so we can tell a story about politics today
that is relevant today, but that will be relevant in 20
years from now. Yeah, like that's more where I feel comfortable. And so I don't know, like we don't write about like
it's really
modern technology.
It's really hard to write overt. I feel like Sonia and I are very much lyrically focused, but it's really hard to come to. It's hard trying to write a song like Bruce Springsteen or Tom Waits.
Yeah.
And it's something that like
it's a trap.
Lovely Dark cannot do because it's such an overt left turn.
Okay.
Where it sounds weird and it sounds forced. So it's trying to find some way to be universal and try to find certain universal themes related to the everyday life by still looking at it through the the certain gaze that we have right now.
Yeah.
The we seems to be expanding, as you were describing, there being a more collaborative component to the songwriting.
There is definitely that.
And I think that fits nicely with the universality, the fact that it's no longer the product of primarily two songwriters.
It started with just Travis too, almost exclusively. And then I kind of glommed on, and and then we maybe had like one or two songs that were written.
You got to think about, you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you know that the more talented people can go in there and jump along, by all means, please, let's just find some way to
otherwise you're writing the same song over and over again at some point.
Yeah.
You need some fresh opinions.
Yeah.
Fresh ideas.
It's full of life. I think the new songs are full of life, and the whole band is like the trees all working together to write the song. That's great. Do you have any thoughts as to when the record is likely to be ready, or possible title for the record?
Now I kind of want it to be like deeper into the royal.
Yeah, right.
Roiled.
Yeah, roiled. Roiled again.
I think that we're hoping to go in at the start of the new year. Is when we're hoping to start recording.
Okay.
The last record took a long time because it took a long time to have babies.
Yeah, well, it didn't take a long time to record. It just took a long time to get it out because there was a hiatus that happened.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah, it was recorded at Crazy Beast by Ben
Durant.
Ben Durant, who has worked with Roman de Luna and Andrew Bird and Dosh.
Yeah.
Will you be returning there for the new record, do you think?
We're trying to figure it out.
We're weighing our options. We love what Ben Durant does. Like, I just feel at home in his studio. He's so easy to work with. He's awesome. Yeah.
For the previous record, you also went for kind of trying to capture the live feel approach.
That was really important to us, I think, after our first album, Territories. So with Territories, we did a lot of tracking at home and added a lot of stuff after
overdubbing, and we didn't record both drums at the same time, which was a little problematic.
For the first record.
For the first record.
Yeah.
So after that, it kind of synced into it.
Yeah.
So Into the Royal is more about just trying to capture only exactly what we sounded like live.
Yeah.
So that was basically second or third takes. Newborn is basically second or third takes with mostly keeping the vocal in and then just overdubbing some stuff.
Yeah.
So I think we're looking at more trying to explore and have a mixture of live songs and studio songs.
Sure. Oh, okay.
Maybe songs that we never even play live.
Yeah, so now conversely, there will be certain songs where they're intentionally built up in the studio.
Yeah, where we don't feel pressured to recreate that in a live setting because it's already logistically difficult to get 6 people on stage where, 2 drum kits. If you ever come see us at the 331, it's hilarious. Once our guitarist had to play standing like on the actual floor, and he would have to move out of the way when people would come by to go to the bathroom. So that was kind of when we were like, all right, we gotta cool it and like pare it down as much as we can.
Territories we also used to switch around where people would play bass, guitar, drums, and we would rotate.
Yeah, our guitarist played drums on one song.
On top of that, wow.
And it's just like, it's out of control.
And after that we realized we don't want to be that problematic for sound people, and we don't want to have that much time.
We're not
songs.
Arcade Fire.
Very kind of
as much as we aspire to be, can't show
You're
up.
lovely duck.
Yeah.
You're interesting. Yeah. Okay, well let's see if is there anything that you'd particularly like to talk about that we haven't talked about?
You're karaoke?
The fact that Ben and I both sing the same rock and roll
song,
suicide karaoke.
Mm-hmm. It's an important factor. I don't know, this has been really fun.
I found it really fun. The session was really fun. I think it will be one of the best ones.
Oh man, I hope that you don't fact check everything.
The thing for Sonia and me is always just trying to find what's mythical, what's reality, where does it mean?
Yeah.
So like part of the even conspiracy theories, if there's that notion, it's fun to explore. The Phoenix, there's this book, who was it by?
The Adventures in Unhistory?
Adventures in Unhistory by David Abramson.
Mm-hmm.
And all what it is basically myths and the historical things that cause the myths. So there's the notion of the werewolf and how the werewolf came about was there's a time when there's rabid wolves. So there's people in Europe who would be living out on the outsides, and they would be attacked by a big wolf who was rabid. The person would walk down into the community and be like, I was attacked by a giant wolf. Help me.
And it wasn't acting like a normal wolf.
Yeah, it wasn't acting like a normal wolf. It was
a
big wolf who just came over here. So then they would go back to their area, and then the next full moon, which is enough time for rabies to set in, they would go back to the community and attack and act really weird. All what the community knew about was
they had been bitten by a wolf.
Bitten by a wolf.
Yeah.
So that's the whole notion of werewolves.
Yeah.
That spot.
I guess that's always the thing is what is myth? What is real, and how could you explain these myths?
And is the myth? It seems like an important question. Is the myth conducive to flourishing and surviving in the royal?
Yeah. What mythologies do you take with you?
Well, it's also if you were a child, they used to do Grimm's fairy tales and everything else. How they set up society was about what is myth, what is not, how you teach societal norms, what is about myths, what is about stories, and that's how you adjusted to your life, and that's how you learned how to adjust basically.
Yeah.
So I feel right now part of that is lost. You're left with Pixar, you're left with DreamWorks, whatever else. Disney, but there's that whole element I think that's trying to figure out how do stories influence life, what is the universal themes, how do you move forward basically.
Yeah. I a favorite bunch of lyrics of mine from Lovely Dark are in I Am the Altar, and they are, please don't break the holy curse. We love what we were, we love what we are all liars, we are all framed by nature's ways. And so I don't know whether that relates to what we're talking about now, but the idea of a plea for the holy curse to not be broken, and then that's followed by a focus on what one is and what one has been. Could we just end by kind of glossing all of that?
That was all you. Nice job.
Good job.
Well, I mean, it's the whole thing is you are who you are, and there's things will change. The verbiage of who you are will change, but people have always been the same throughout the start of civilization till now. You have the myth that people have been drastically different, but there's always been archetypes. There's always been a way of trying to understand who you are and what you believe through the current lens.
Yeah.
So you love what you were, you love what you are. So it's more about that notion of accept change, accept faith, accept everything changing around you, but know that you are you and that you'll always be you.
Yeah.
Be comfortable in that.
Yeah.
Nice. So so fittingly, we've been taking a reverse chronological journey true Lovely
Down
Duck
spiral
that
into
have
the
been
royal.
remaining remaining what they are, but changing what they are throughout. And we can look forward to being led into new royals by the new Lovely Duck, because I'm really excited about the new material. But to close the episode, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is
You're
so
very
much
welcome.
fun.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Hopefully you've had fun going on the journey with us. And now we're going to enter the royal one last time with Lovely Duck.
Followed by Carl Sagan.
Yeah. Nice. Back at the Minnehaha Recording Company. So this has been Back to the City. Let's return to the Minnehaha Recording Company for Into the Royal with Lovely Duck.
Another perfect day, another endless drought, and the rising tide. I never meant it all to feel this spark. Did you expect me just to come apart? It'll come for you, like it comes for me. It'll come for you, like it comes for me. Hatred out.